Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Down Syndrome Center podcast. As always, I am your host, Dr. Kishore Vellody, and today we have a really special podcast for you all. In fact, you know how I end every podcast with, if you have an idea for the podcast, please reach out, and certainly many of you do. But for the first time ever, we had someone reach out, and I said, you know what, we need to have you on a podcast because of how cool this is. And so I'm really excited to introduce you all to Jesse Norell, who is joining us today. Jesse, I don't want to give too much away. Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and why it is you're on this podcast? Why are you interested in people with Down syndrome?
Well, thank you, Kishore. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here today. So I've been married for 19 years. I have a typical 8-year-old son named Tyler and a 6-year-old daughter named Alyssa who has Down syndrome. And it was a birth diagnosis. We found out at the exact same moment that she had Down syndrome and a heart defect, which was a lot to process.
Sure.
And a lot to take in. I think the very best of us can have the diagnosis of Down syndrome given to us for one of our kids and say, hey, this actually might be great. For a lot of people, I think it's neutral at best, maybe a little bit negative. They don't know what to do with that information, but I'll tell you, there's nobody that says, yay, heart surgery, right?
Yes, that's for sure.
It's a big thing to deal with. And so Alyssa just inspired me to do a lot of things that I used to do. I used to write a lot of music and play in bands, and music was a central part of my life. I'm a guitar teacher, so I continue to teach guitar, and I've been around music, and I do recitals with my young students, and sometimes I'll even sing if they're doing like a pop song that they're playing along to. But it wasn't until Alyssa came along that I felt inspired to write songs again. One of the things that happened was during the time when I was really focused on her and keeping her well, and when she was failure to thrive and having a really hard time, I had something going on with me that I was ignoring. It turns out I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and even playing guitar and sitting down to play a set at a coffee shop or something was too painful. I couldn't do it. When I got on some great medication, the gift of being able to perform music again was given back to me, and it felt like this wonderful obligation that I felt like I can't not do this. And started writing songs about Alyssa and her journey. It started with a really sad song called What to Tell You, which is the first song on this record we're going to talk about. And I wanted to know if people wanted to know the happy ending of the story, which is where it ends up, and not just leave it at Alyssa's birth was really hard, which is what the first song was about. And people supported it on Kickstarter and gave me enough to get some gear for a small home recording studio, and 12 songs, and 2 years later, here it's coming out here in March.
Wow. And Jesse, you know, being a listener to the podcast, and your wife as well, that this is an audio podcast. But so I'm going to tell our listeners what I'm seeing in the background is this awesome electric guitar and amp. And I mean, you really do have a setup there for making some great music. And I'll also share that I got the opportunity to get a little sneak peek at your album that you gave me. And I was blown away, not just by the music. Of course, the musical ability is wonderfully there, but just the lyrics are just wonderful, just beautiful stuff. And so I guess give us an idea. So what is the name of the album? And tell me why you named it that, because it's a very unique name.
So it's called Aorta Borealis, and the aorta part is obviously a reference to the heart. And that is, I mean, very obvious what that's all about, because Alyssa went through 2 heart surgeries. And then the Borealis part is a reference to the Northern Lights. Now, the Northern Lights is this beautiful phenomenon, which is on like #1 on my bucket list now, by the way. And it can only be seen against the backdrop of darkness. There was one time on the day that I was listening to the final mix of the record, and there was a news report that I was going to be able to see the Northern Lights that night. And it would have been great, but guess what? They were kind of, for whatever reason, it was delayed into the morning. The sun rose and I couldn't see them.
Ah,
So it's that sort of darkness that can reveal a lot of beauty,
mhm.
especially when we finally see the light, when we come out on the other side and we can just, in my case, enjoy my family, enjoy Alyssa, and not just be worried about doctor's appointments and feeding tubes and, you know, the exact ratio of formula to milk and all these things that just completely took over that period of life. And when you get out of that, you realize that you are extremely lucky to live the life
Yeah.
that you live.
And I guess, as the listeners to this podcast typically are parents, although we get some caregivers as well, and we love having them on board. But as you're speaking directly to the parents through these songs, many of them have also experienced kids who have had to go through heart surgeries and things like that. What is it that you're trying to communicate through the songs on this album?
Well, one of the things, primarily, I wanted to tell my story. And I think that's a very powerful thing to do, is that we tell each other's stories and we don't hide behind the feelings and the emotions that are involved in that. Um, and I'm finding that people are responding in really surprising ways. People that have had trauma in their past, but nothing like the things that I've gone through, completely different, are reaching out to me and saying, I heard one song and I had to come talk to you. And I'm really comfortable telling you my story because they don't really tell me why. I think it's because I'm telling mine and I'm making it very honest and public and putting out there in a very sort of raw and emotional kind of way. And so I'm looking for connection, first of all. And second of all, I think it's about validating all the different emotions that parents feel.
Mhm.
So one of the things I wanted to make sure that I did, and some people are maybe going to react to this a little bit negatively, thinking that everything should be positive and we should sprinkle that positivity on everything. I wanted to validate the emotions of when you find out your child has Down syndrome, when you find out your child isn't well, to try to pretend that those aren't powerful and difficult feelings to deal with. I don't think that does anybody any favors.
Mhm.
Um, and so the first 7 songs on the record just kind of walk through that journey. But then the last 5 songs get to celebrate a life that was lost before, that just sort of disappeared for a couple of years. And you just put your head down and you try to get through it. And my hope is that families can resonate with these themes. I've heard people say, when I put on, the end of the album, I get my kids just immediately start dancing around the room. And I love that. And then I've heard a lot of people say, I'm weeping at the beginning of your album,
Mhm.
but not in a negative way, in a way that's like, oh, you're telling my story, or you're telling it in a way that connects with me. Um, so yeah, I don't want people to feel like any of the things that they're feeling are okay. There's so much to this journey that we walk through.
Yes, yes. And I think music does such a wonderful job of communicating those types of emotions that you're talking about. And I'm just gonna see, I'm gonna throw out a few of the lyrics as I was looking through the lyric sheet. I'm gonna throw out a few lyrics. I wanted you to just kind of give us a sense of what it was that you were feeling in those moments, or why it is that you use these particular words in your songs. And so the one I heard was a song where it says, "I will fight for you." Tell me,
Mm.
as a parent, what you've gone through. Like, why did you include those lyrics?
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
That I felt right after this is the second song on the record that you're asking about. Is called Together, and the
Mhm.
first song, as I mentioned, is about Alyssa's birth. And at that time I felt like I had a fight or flight response to that.
Mhm.
I felt there was part of me inside that wanted to figure out a way to run away, like maybe I couldn't handle it. And I had to sort of take a minute and have some conversations with my wife, Carrie, and figure out that we actually could handle this, that we were in a good enough position that we could do this. And there were maybe are a lot of people that are in worse positions than we are to be able to handle this. And so then the decision that at that point, the flight went away and it was all fight after that. We had just moved back from Singapore. We were in between homes. We were sort of in a 6-month rental. We had been living with family before that. And our situation was very much in flux. It felt like there was a lot of chaos. We had stuff being shipped from Singapore that arrived and we had nowhere to put it. Just like life stuff that I wanted to get sorted out before Alyssa came along. She came along just a few days early and we weren't ready. And we certainly weren't ready for all the birth diagnosis stuff. But at a certain point I decided, okay, there's a battle that's going to happen. The chaos isn't going to let up for a little bit, but I'm willing to fight through it. And a lot of the reason that I was willing to do that is because I met Alyssa, and there's an advantage to having a birth diagnosis because your kid is there while you're processing. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both. We don't get to decide, so we just sort of take the hand that we're dealt. But I got to realize, oh, this little baby is actually really wonderful. I love her a lot. And so the references to together are how my daughter Alyssa helped me put one foot in front of the other, keep moving forward, because I saw her and I saw that she needed me to do all these things for her to get her through. And then there's a verse at the end of that song about just the community as well. So it's a reference to the people that have helped me, that have walked before me. And hopefully this album shows people that, you know, I have walked in a path that they might have in front of them as well.
Yeah. Yes. What about one of the songs you have has the line, "The lucky ones, the lucky few"? It gets repeated a few times. What do you mean by those words?
Yeah, that song, it's called "The Lucky Few." It's a term that was coined by Heather Avis. She has a book with that title, and there's a subtitle afterwards. And it's been adopted by the Down syndrome community. My guess is that many of your listeners don't need an explanation about, the lucky few. And I wanted to write a song about it. And to explain exactly what it means to me, just a little bit of context. I have to back up one song in the album to the song called "Darkness to Light." There's a line in that song, and "Darkness to Light" is about Alyssa's second heart surgery, which was simultaneously like PTSD inducing. Like, is this never going to end? Is the other shoe going to just drop every time? Because we thought we were out of the woods and now we're not anymore. But then she came through it with such flying colors that it felt like there was this big shift for us. And that's when life sort of was able to resume as we hoped it would. There's a line in that song that says, "Can I not be the unluckiest 1%?" Because when you have a child that's born with Down syndrome, and they're part of the percentage that needs heart surgery, and they're part of the percentage that needs a feeding tube, and they're part of the percentage that then needs a second heart surgery, you start thinking, I must be the unluckiest. We must be the unluckiest family in the world. And then when she came through that and she was able to just be her wonderful self, we were able to enjoy our family without all these other things going on. It's an immediate response to the previous song. "The Lucky Few" is saying, oh, actually, I'm super lucky. Look, because we all lived, we all survived it. And Alyssa's on 0 medication now. She's on the longest leash that she can possibly be with the heart doctor and everybody else. And I feel very lucky now. And so I felt like I could adopt this phrase for myself because I feel super fortunate. And if I can just plug, as of this recording today, February 18th, music video for this song was released. It's fully animated, and it's about my daughter saving the city from a robot invasion. So she's like a cartoon superhero in the video, and that just released today, and I'm really excited about it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. By the time this podcast goes out, it'll be available. And so maybe I can is there a link maybe that I'd be able to include for that? Okay.
Yes,
I'll
I can
do
send that
that.
to you. Awesome.
I will do that. I will do that. And I guess one other song that the title definitely struck me. Welcome to Sydney. Tell me more about that song, why you wrote that one.
So you mentioned that you're familiar with the essay by Emily Pearl Kingsley called Welcome
Yes.
to Holland. And for a good percentage of your listeners, this is already clicking. I was sent a lot of things when Alyssa was born that I didn't find very helpful. I didn't find it helpful to think about what she was going to be like at 18 and whether she
Mhm.
was going to go to college and some of these other things, whether she was somebody sent me a video about the Special Olympics, and I was still grieving the fact that she couldn't do the regular Olympics. Not that, like, I expect my kids to be in the regular Olympics, but there's just this process. There's all sorts of processing that has to go on. But one of the helpful things that somebody sent me was this essay called
Mhm.
Welcome to Holland. And just as quickly as I can, because a lot of people already know, it's about somebody that plans this trip to Italy, and they get their guidebooks and they pack for the weather and they do everything that they need to do, and they get on the plane, and when they arrive they hear welcome to Holland. And this is an upsetting thing for them because this was not their dream vacation that they spent years planning. This was something else. But then they realize that Holland has tulips, and Holland has windmills, and Holland has Rembrandts. And it's actually not that where they ended up is bad. It's different, and it just takes time to adjust to realize that they're in someplace really wonderful. So the correlation there is between uh, people that have kids with special needs, particularly Down syndrome, need to go through this process of readjusting their thinking. And so I wrote a song that this is the last song on the record, and it's sort of a summary of the entire journey. Um, and it's called Welcome to Sydney because Alyssa's middle name is Sydney. So in the choruses, when I'm basically singing a brochure pamphlet for Sydney, I'm really just giving an advertisement for how wonderful my daughter is.
Hmm.
And we took a trip to Sydney, and I won't get into all the details, but there were some really wonderful things that happened and some really awful things that happened. It was the beginning of it was kind of nightmare vacation territory. We had somebody who was very close to us pass away while we were away. We booked an Airbnb that was infested with cockroaches
Oh
over the
gosh.
Christmas season. Like, things were going wrong at the beginning of this vacation, but we were able to still go to the Sydney Opera House and see a play, and go to the Sydney Zoo and hold a koala and high five a kangaroo, and it was an amazing trip. So the question is, how are you going to perceive your experiences? Are you going to focus on the negative, or are you going to focus on the positive? And so for me, that song is all about finding as many positives as you can and really clinging to them, especially when it comes to our kids. And once you see how wonderful they are, it's really not that hard to focus on the positives, because my daughter and a lot of the kids with Down syndrome I've met are just some of the most wonderful kids and adults and people that I've ever met. And I just feel very fortunate.
That's awesome. Wow, it's just a beautiful story. I appreciate that, and I appreciate this album. And I love the fact that they're still called records, even though there may be some younger listeners who don't even know what a record is. But what about how do families get this album if they want to check it out? If they want to get it, is it actually a physical record that they're getting, or is it MP3s like we live now in these days?
It's everything and it's
Everything.
everywhere. So if
Okay.
people go to jessenorell.com, um, you can buy a CD. I have a few hundred of them that I had made. And my plug for that is the album really flows together. A lot of times there's a very careful flowing together of the songs, and a very careful spot where it flips from one track to the other. And if you've got, fast food McDonald's ads in the middle of this sort of really cathartic experience that I'm hoping the listeners are having while they're listening, that's less than ideal. So you can order a CD to have exactly what I hope the listening experience is like. But it'll also be available everywhere. I wanted this to be a gift for people. This is not about me and about me getting any sort of anything out of it. Made it as a gift for this community that I hope blesses people. So it's available. It will be available free on Spotify and YouTube Music, and just everywhere that you can get your music. You can speak into your smart speaker, and it'll come on.
That's wonderful. Wow. Well, what a gift, and so great that we were able to connect this way. And I'm really excited to hear the audience response as we get this album available in everyone's hands here. So as we close, I just wanted to ask you if there was anything that you would want to share with our listeners that we haven't talked about yet, anything you would want to encourage them with in your journey that you would want them to take home with them from this podcast.
I think we've covered everything. I think that for anybody that is in the Minnesota area or the Midwest, Alyssa's got me playing in a band again now to support this thing. And so I'm playing with a world-class drummer and cellist, and then we're doing a trio to try to accomplish what's on this record to, the best we can. And so on April 8th, we're playing at the Parkway Theater in Minneapolis, and it is going to be one of the greatest nights of my life. I'm so excited.
That's so great. Awesome. Yeah. And well, I want to just let our podcast listeners know, I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as I did. I think this is one of those times where I really do. At the end of every podcast, I tell you, if you have any questions or anything you want us to cover on the podcast, please do reach out to Down Syndrome Center at chp.edu. I do read each and every email. And if there are topics that you would like us to discuss, or perhaps there's something that you would like to share with our podcast audience that you think would be a benefit to them, please do reach out and let us know. Also, if you'd like to partner with us in what we do here at the center, that's really easy to do. You go to givetochildrens.org/Down Syndrome Center, and that will get you connected with our fundraising page, which definitely this podcast, while just as Jesse was sharing today, a labor of love from my perspective, unfortunately, these things do cost money. And so we do definitely depend on the generosity of our listeners. So thank you for all of you who have contributed thus far. And until next time, bye-bye.